Hey everybody, this is Michael Skeleton here. Today we're going to be taking a look at Nemo's War 2nd Edition. Now this is going to be a little bit different video than usual. I'm not going to do a setup and how to play with every single rule in the game. Instead, I'm going to give you an in-depth overview of the game, and by that I mean I'm going to show you how you win and lose the game, what you do on a player's turn, the different actions you can take, and just give you a general feel for the game. So by the end of this video, you should have a really good idea of how the game plays, whether you want to buy it or if you already own it. You should be able to set it up pretty quickly and get to playing without too much fuss, and you can just refer to the rule book when the corner cases or questions come up. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. So Nemo's War is based on the novel 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. In it, you'll be playing Captain Nemo, and you'll be represented by the Nautilus ship here, miniature. You'll be traveling around these different oceans. This is the main game board with the different major and minor oceans in it. As you travel from ocean to ocean, you'll be attacking the various ships, you'll be searching for treasures, you'll be going on adventures, you can incite riots, and you can try and rest and repair your ship in various ways. All of these things gain you victory points for the end of the game, and that's actually one of the parts I find most interesting about Nemo's War. So at the beginning of the game, you'll get to choose a motive. In this game, I'm choosing the Explore motive. And at the end of the game, when you score various points, you're going to modify it by your motive. So in this example here, for each of the warships I sink throughout the game, I'll add up all those points that they're worth. But then because my motive was to explore, I'm actually going to get -1 point for each of those ships at the end of the game. But as you can see at the very bottom, for each of the wonders seen, I'll add up all the points, and I'm going to multiply that by 7 at the end of the game. Now, there's 4 different motives. There's explore, there's anti-imperialism, which as you can see, the wonders seen is only ×3, so they're not as good. Warships sunk +0, but what they actually want to do is they want to do some liberation, which you get if you incite uprisings in the different oceans. The next one is science. This one really depends on science discovered, so various treasures will have this certain science symbol on them. Some cards do. Some of the upgrades you can get to your ship, and you're going to get ×6 for that at the end of the game. And the last one is war. So as expected, science discovered and wonders seen aren't all that great. The liberation's ×4, so that's pretty good. Going on adventures is going to get you -1, and really sinking warships is going to get you the bulk of the points. So when you set up the game, you're going to build an adventure deck. The adventure deck lives up here. Depending on what motive you choose, you're going to build the adventure deck in a certain way, and it's basically divided into 4 different parts. These cards, which are the act cards, and you're going to disperse them throughout the adventure deck in a certain way. So at the beginning of each turn, you're going to draw a card from this adventure deck. As you uncover these act cards that I talk about, the game gets a little bit harder. You're going to add different ships, harder ships, into the ship bag, and the game ends when you make it all the way through the adventure deck. That's when you score the game and see how well you did. There's actually a whole book of outcomes, which is called the epilogue book. And depending on what motive you chose and what your score was, you'll read a little passage that will kind of wrap up the game for you. So now that you know how to win the game, I'll briefly explain how you lose the game, and I'll point those things out more as we get into more detail. So as you move around the oceans, you'll be placing ship tokens. These ships have not been discovered. I mean, you know they're there, but you don't know what type of ship they are. Each turn of the game, you'll be placing more ships. All these white ships out here now are non-warships, but these colored ones are warships. If you need to place a warship and there's no space for it, you automatically lose the game. There's a ship resource track up here, which we'll talk about in just a minute in more detail, but if any of these gets to the very end, you are defeated. And the last way you can win the game is the notoriety track. As you defeat more ships and do more nefarious things throughout the game, your notoriety is going to go up. And depending on what motive you choose, if your notoriety ever hits a certain level, you will lose the game. So now let's take a look at the ship resources track a little bit closer. So throughout the game, on various cards and various actions during your turn, you'll be doing checks. Most checks involve rolling 2 dice, comparing it to different numbers, and seeing whether you pass or failed, or how well you passed, how well you failed. Now, to mitigate the dice rolls a little bit, you do have 3 ship resources: Nemo, Crew, and Hull. Now, whenever you're rolling dice to do a check, it will tell you which of these resources you can exert and therefore add a certain value to your dice roll. If I'm doing a skill check and it says I can exert Nemo, I can move this to in between and it says +2. So whatever I roll, I'm going to add 2 to. So I rolled 10. My actual result will be 12. Now you'll compare it to a chart or what the card says. And if you actually pass that skill roll, then you gain that resource back. Now, if you fail it, you actually lose 2 of those. Usually. Sometimes you can go down 1 level. Now, as I just said, if any of these ship resources goes all the way to the end, you will be defeated. Another way to help you mitigate the dice rolls and get you extra actions throughout the game are the characters. So you have a crew of 6 characters, and during the game you can sacrifice these characters to gain benefits. So Ned Land over here gives you +1 DRM after a roll. DRM means dice roll modifier, so that in essence is letting you add 1 to your dice roll. Now if at the end of the game he's still surviving, you get 4 character victory points at the end. But if you happen to sacrifice them, then you will not get that. And not only that, you'll have to up your notoriety on the notoriety track by 1 when you flip them over. So that brings us to the notoriety track, which is up here above the ship resources. As you defeat ships, they will also give you notoriety. So here's a non-warship, and as you can see on the left side, there's a notoriety symbol. So if you ever defeat this ship in combat, you're going to gain 1 notoriety. Gaining notoriety on this track in and of itself doesn't really do anything, but as you hit certain points, there's a level over here on 14, but there's also one here right here. If you ever gain that much notoriety, all these ships are going to be added to the ship bag. Now, we haven't really talked about this ship bag yet, but basically these ships are going to be a lot harder to defeat when they come out, and your chances of pulling a stronger ship will be greater as your notoriety goes up. As I said in the losing the game section, if you ever hit certain levels, then you will automatically lose. So let's talk about a general turn of the game. The first thing you're going to do is take an adventure card, you're going to flip it up, and you're going to do whatever it says. Depending on whether you pass or fail, you're going to put it in one of these 2 piles. There's also cards that you can keep, and you just put them in front of you and use them later in the game. So once you've done the event, you're going to roll for actions. Now, at the very beginning of the game, you're going to roll 2 white dice. As the game goes on through the different acts, you're going to roll more. You're going to look at the results of these dice. So I rolled a white 4 and a white 6 and a black 4. Now, the difference in the white numbers is 2, and that's how many actions I'm going to add for the actions I have available this turn. You keep track of actions up here in the top left corner of the ocean board, so since I get to add 2, I'm going to move it up, and that means I've got a total of 4 actions I can use for the current turn. Now, before I can use actions, I also have to place new ships in all the oceans that I just rolled numbers for. So all the major oceans on the board have a dice number above them. So this one's number 4 and this one is number 6. Now for all the numbers you just rolled, 4, 4, 6, you're going to have to place a ship token in it. Now ship placement involves a number of steps. The first thing you're going to try and do is put a hidden ship token on those oceans. So right now I've got 2 dice rolls that are number 4. Now this ocean is filled up already. It's got 2 hidden ships and 1 that I've already uncovered. So the next step is to place a hidden ship in one of the adjacent oceans. Number 4, which is South Atlantic, is connected to Cape Horn and also the Cape of Good Hope, but alas, those are also filled. So the third step is to reveal a ship in that ocean or an adjacent ocean, and that's what we're going to have to do here. Now there's a ship pool inside this bag. It's got various different types of ships, warships and non-warships, and we're going to have to pull 2 actually because we rolled 2 4s and we are at this level. So we're going to take off these 2 hidden ship tokens and pull 2 random ships. So we pulled a non-warship. That is good. And another non-warship, which is also good. Now, it should be noted that the reverse side of the non-warships is a warship. It's a different color. But when you pull tokens, you specifically put them on the white or yellow side as you pull them out. Now I also rolled a 6, so we're going to have to do the same thing over here in the Indian Ocean. It is actually connected to an ocean on the left side of the board, but all my spaces are filled right now. I'm in the middle of a game, so we're going to replace a hidden ship with a ship from the token bag. And lucky us, we got another non-warship. So now next turn, if I rolled another 4 and I don't have any hidden ship tokens in that ocean or the adjacent oceans, instead of what I just did, I would have to move on to the next step. So step 4 is to flip a white non-warship to its warship side. So I could choose which one I wanted to, and I'd have to flip it over as my ship placement action. Now the last and final step of the ship placement priority, which basically means not only is this ocean filled with ships, the adjacent oceans are filled with ships, and not only that, I would have had to already flip every single one of these to the warship side. If that was the case, then I have to specifically draw a warship from this bag and place it on any empty space on the game board. Now this is another way you can lose the game, because if you draw that warship and there are no empty spaces, then you immediately lose. So after you place all the ships, you get to do your actions for the turn. You will have your actions allotted. We've got 4, and there's this nice handy chart that shows you how many action points you have to use and what you can do. Before I explain all the different actions, though, I did want to say that there's a thing called a lull turn. If you happen to roll the same number on the white die, then you'll actually get no actions added for that round. And that's really going to hurt. So to compensate for that, you only have to place ships on the white die numbers. You can ignore the black die or all the black dice because you might get more throughout the game. And then they're also going to let you put treasures on the board. So in that example, I rolled a 4. I would get to put a treasure on the 4 ocean. Now this ocean already has one, so I wouldn't. But then you also get to add a treasure to the adventure deck. And as you take the adventure action, you'll get to take those treasures and discover them. The other thing is the actions that you can do on a turn are actually cheaper on a lull turn. So everything that costs 2 action points only costs 1. And that means every action only costs 1 action point on a lull turn. Now you might be saying, well, you're not going to get any action points if you rolled the same number on your white die, but you can actually save an action point from round to round. The other thing that'll happen on a lull turn is if you have any uprisings going on, which are represented by these little black cubes, then you possibly will remove some of those. That's something to watch out for, especially if you're doing the anti-imperialist motive and you're trying to incite these uprisings. So back to the actions. The most straightforward one is to move. It costs 1 action point, so we would use 1 action point. And then you can move 1 ocean that is connected. So that's any of these white lines connecting the ocean. So I can move from here to over there with my move ability. The next is searching for treasure. So if I was over here and there's a treasure token in that ocean, I can search for that treasure. And like most things in this game, you're going to roll 2 dice and compare it to a chart. Now the chart for all the actions is over here. It's really handy. You don't have to memorize anything. In this case, for searching, we can exert any one of these resources, but only one. Let's say I'm going to exert the crew. So I get a +3. I'm going to roll the die. I get 8 plus the 3, so that is an 11. So in this table, we're always trying to get a 7 or above. So if we get 6 or below, we're going to fail it. If we get 2 or below, we're really going to fail it. Now, if we get 7 or 8, it's pretty much a we barely succeeded, so something good happens. We get the treasure, but we also gain a notoriety. If you do a 9 or 11, it's basically a normal success. So in this case, we would collect a treasure, nothing else happens. And whenever you get a 12 or above, it's a really good thing that happens. So in this case, we would actually collect 2 treasures. Now, one thing to note in my example is it tells you right here, you get a -1 per revealed ship token. Now in the ocean, I tried to look for treasure. There was 3 revealed ships. I rolled an 8 and I risked my crew +3. So basically the risking of the crew and the 3 revealed ships canceled each other out. And I really just got an 8, which means I'll collect a treasure and gain a notoriety. Now that we are successful collecting the actual treasures, pretty easy. We're just going to discard the treasure token and then we're going to draw an actual treasure from the treasure bag. In this case, we got a wonder, the lost city, It's got an I symbol, so it's worth 1 point at the end of the game. For us, it's worth 7. So we're just going to stick that up here in the collected treasures section. So there's all sorts of different treasures. These are the wonders I've collected. They've got the I symbol. These have a diamond symbol on them. They're just counted as treasures for the end of the game, which I'm getting +1 for each one I discover because of the explore motive. These ones say to retain, so in the game I can actually spend them, and they're generally worth treasure points if I don't, and if I do spend it, I get, like this one gives me an extra action. So I would just discard it and I won't get those points at the end of the game. There's also ones that say X and blah-de-blah, and that means you have to immediately use it and do whatever it says. So since we're talking about treasures, let's talk about doing the adventure action. It costs 2 action points, and it lets you possibly gain treasure depending on the amount of treasure tokens on the adventure deck. So you're going to draw the top card, and you're going to decide whether you want to do it or not. If you do attempt to do it, whether you pass or fail, then you will collect treasures equal to the amount of treasure tokens. So in this case, if I do what the card says, I'll discard these and I'll get 2 treasure tokens. But you can also choose not to do what the card says. Some cards are straight up bad events, and in that case, you would put that card onto the bottom of the adventure deck and leave the treasure on top. So next time, maybe you'll have better luck. So the next actions I'll talk about is rest and repair. They're pretty straightforward. You can spend 2 action points to rest, and that is giving you the possibility of reclaiming some crew. And the repair is the same thing, but for the hull. So if you're getting really damaged in your hull or crew, you might need to take a turn, spend 2 action points, and try and repair one of those. Same process as searching for treasure. We're going to roll 2 dice. We're going to add modifiers. There's going to be some sort of penalties sometimes. And if we are really lucky, we'll heal that resource by 2, but you are risking it. So you could possibly lose one of those resources if you fail that dice roll pretty bad. So the next action is the refit action. These card sleeves are kind of glaring. But basically you can purchase upgrades for your ship, but you have to do, number 1, a refit action, and number 2, you have to pay for it in salvaged ships. So as you beat ships, you're going to either put them in this tonnage track, which basically gets you points at the end of the game, or you can salvage them, and you can salvage a max of 4. Now for every point that this costs, you're going to have to discard that many salvaged ships. So right now, I can't even try for one of these because I don't have 3 or 4 salvaged ships, but later in the game, once I've defeated some more ships, I might be able to go for that. Upgrade cards are just put in front of you. They're usually worth some sort of science points or other various points, and they give you a benefit throughout the game. So in this one is the hydro drive, and then each time I perform a move action, I can actually move 2 ocean spaces instead of just 1. So it's pretty nice for the explore motive. So the next action is Incite. So you can try to incite an uprising if there are cubes in this uprising pool into the ocean that you are at. Now it has to be a connected land. Basically you're trying to incite an uprising there, and you're going to roll 2 dice and compare the results. Now when you do incite, you're going to get -1 to your roll for each revealed ship, and you're also going to get -1 if there's already an uprising connected to that ocean. But the good thing about inciting an uprising is not only do you place a uprising cube, you get to reduce your notoriety. This is one of the few ways that you can reduce your notoriety by 1 if you're successful, by 2 if you're really successful. So that's pretty nice. So last but certainly not least, we have attacking ships. So there are 2 different types of attacks, bold and stock, which is basically just a careful attack, and you get to choose which ship you're attacking in the ocean you're in. Attacking costs 1 action point, and you must target a ship and choose bold or stock. Let's go over stock first. That's the careful attack. So basically you're only going to attack that 1 ship. You're going to get a +1 dice roll modifier for being careful, and you also don't have to attack that ship. So in the case of the ship you're attacking is hidden, which you might want to do, well, you immediately reveal what that hidden ship is, and then you get to choose whether you want to attack it or not. Now, the advantage of doing a bold attack is that you may attack more than 1 ship in the ocean. So first of all, if you're attacking a hidden ship, you reveal it, you must attack it, and if you're successful, now you don't get the +1 dice roll modifier for a bold attack, but if you're successful and actually take down that ship, you can move on and target the next ship. It won't cost you any action points, but you will have to gain a notoriety. And you don't have to attack these ships in order. Each time you get to choose which ship you're attacking. Now note, you can only attack ships in the ocean you're in, not the ones adjacent. Now there's a couple ways that a bold attack stops. If you ever fail to sink a ship, then the bold attack will immediately end. You can't keep fighting. Also, as I mentioned earlier, when you sink a ship, you can choose to put it in the tonnage track, which gets you points at the end of the game, or you can salvage it to try and get upgrades. If you ever salvage a ship, then that ends your bold attack. If you've destroyed all the ships in that ocean, you're done, and you can choose to stop at any time. So now let's go over exactly how combat works. So there are two types of ships in the game. There are non-warships that are white, and they have only a defense value up here in the top right corner. And there are warships, which are all different colors based on their strength, but basically you can tell because they have an attack value up at the top left corner. Step 1 for combat is that the warship attacks you. So you're going to roll 2 dice just like always, and you're going to subtract 1 if there's any other revealed warships in the ocean. Now you're going to compare this roll to the attack strength of the ship. So in this case it is 7, and we rolled a 9, so we're good. Nothing happens. Now if you roll less than that number, then you're going to get hit. When you get hit, you're going to look at the lowest die roll and suffer that many hits. If you are unfortunate enough to roll 2 1s, then it is a disaster and you're going to have to roll for damage. You just roll 1 single dice, and that's how many hits you suffer. Applying hits is straightforward. You're going to roll 1 die, and if you roll a 1, then Nemo's going to get damaged. You're going to go down by 1. If you roll a 2 or 3, your crew are going to get damaged. You'll go down 1. And if you roll a 4, 5, or a 6, your hull is going to get damaged and go down by 1. So if we suffered 3 hits, like in the last example, we're going to roll 3 times. We're going to move each of those down by 1. Once you're done with the warship attacking you, or if you were attacking a non-warship, you would just skip that step and go straight to this step. The Nautilus is going to attack back. Attacking back works just the same way. You're going to roll 2 dice, but you actually want to roll higher than the defense value. So in this case, we're trying to roll higher than a 10. If you roll less, then nothing happens, but you do gain 1 notoriety. And if you happen to exert any ship resources, you're going to lose those as well. If you roll greater, then the ship is sunk. We'll move on to what you do with the ship in just a second. If you're unfortunate enough to roll 2 1s, then it is a disaster. You're going to gain 2 notoriety and lose 2 ship resources if you exerted any. So when you sink a ship, you can put it over here as salvage, like I already told you, but you can also put it in the tonnage track. Now you put it on the ocean that you fought it. So we were in the South Atlantic. We would put it here, and you're filling them from left to right. Now at the end of the game, if you happen to fill all of 1 column, you get the points at the very top at the end of the game. So if we filled up all this first column, which means we defeated 1 ship in each ocean, we would get 8 points at the end of the game. And actually the highest level that you complete is the points you'll score. If you fail an attack on another ship, then you're also going to lose resources that you wagered. If you rolled a 1 as your lowest die and you failed, then you actually only lose 1 of that ship resource. But if your lowest die is not a 1, you're going to lose 2. I did want to take a second to point out that the board is really nice in this game. So right here under the adventures and above the tonnage track, you have the turn sequence. It tells you first you do the event phase, then you place ships, what you do on a standard turn, and what you do on a lull turn. So you don't have to look in the rule book or the back of the rule book or anything else. Also, the combat sequence right here on the board. There's a lot of extra possible modifiers and what order does this do things in again. This lays it all out. You don't have to take your eyes off the game to figure it out. As I said earlier, ship placement priority is a little confusing at first. You get used to it after a while, but that's all laid out here, the 5 different steps. Also, removing the uprising cubes. Right under the action point tracker, it shows you what each of the actions are and what they cost. At the bottom of the ocean map, there's a legend to show you what each of these symbols means and how they are connected. And then finally, the action success table over here on the far left. That's what you're looking at tons during the game. Plus, before you take an action, you can make sure what the consequences are and whether you're going to be able to deal with them. And that's it. That's all I have to say about Nemo's War. I mean, the basic overview of a turn is you're going to do an event from the deck, you're going to roll your dice, place your ships, you're going to take your actions, and then you're going to do it all over again until either the event deck runs out and you score up your total, or you lose by getting too many warships, getting too much notoriety, something like that. So this video is already long enough. I'm just going to give a couple quick final thoughts and wrap it up. Nemo's War, I really enjoy it. The motives, the different motives really are unique to this game and make it hard to master, in my opinion. I've done Explore the most, but I've tried them all once, and it just changes it enough that it makes it feel like a fresh game. Instead of running around collecting treasures, now you're trying to destroy the most warships and trying to buy upgrades to make that happen. I will say this game is pretty hard, especially at first, to understand what you're trying to do, because it really isn't about killing all the warships. It really depends on your motive. The game ramps up really nicely, I think. Now, it is possible to play co-op. I heard it's pretty good. I have not done that myself, so I really can't comment on that. And overall, I would recommend this game. I think it's beautiful and it plays smooth in a solo setting. So anyways, guys, that's it for me. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of Nemo's War 2nd Edition, what you like or didn't like. Give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing for future videos. And with that, Michael Skeleton is out.